Good morning, passengers. Welcome to Martel Air. Unfortunately, I'm not available to stream this weekend due to other parts of my life happening for the entire weekend. But what I will be doing for you instead is some good checklist content. I've talked before about how there is the pre-flight checks that are done before we actually fly the plane, and that I don't do those on stream. I mean, partially because Microsoft Flight Sim doesn't actually require those to be done, but also because, well, I've got the official pilot's operating handbook here, and the pre-flight inspection starts on page 4-6 and it finishes on page 4-21. So there's quite a lot to be done to check that a plane is ready to fly. So we'll be working through those today, and there might be a little break for poetry depending on how we're going for time. So, pre-flight inspection checklist. Section 1, cabin. Pitot-static tube covers. Those would be removed and stored in the cabin with me, so check. Pilot's operating handbook. Accessible to pilot, check. Garmin G1000 Cockpit Reference Guide, accessible to pilot, check. Control locks, can confirm that those are not on, check. Airplane weight and balance is checked. Parking brake is set. All switches are off. Circuit breakers are all closed, pushed in, so we've got panel down here, and we've got the panel over here. Those are all in, closed, check. Alt static air control knob, that is this switch, should be off to push in, check. Inertial separator, normal. Standby flap motor switch, which is all the way back here. Guarded normal, check. Oxygen supply pressure, not installed on this aircraft. Oxygen mask if installed, not installed. Fuel tank selectors, both on. Vent air fans, off. Those are wibbling about in odd positions. Those should be back there. Air conditioning switch. Okay, so that's the air conditioning switch. Where's the vent? That is... vent should be off. So that is off. Is there one on Wing Commander Lamington's side? Yes, and that is off. Air conditioning switch off. Temperature control is all the way closed. Bleed air heat switch off. You can stop jiggling there. Throttle lever. Emergency power lever, normal. Trim controls, set. Fuel oil shut-off knob fully in, check. Cabin heat firewall shut-off knob. Now, which one is that? Cabin heat firewall shut-off, pull off. And that should be in, check. Page 1. Battery switch on. Avionics fans, I can hear those spinning up. Avionics 1 on. Verify that primary flight display 1 comes on, check. Avionics 2 on. Primary flight display 2 is active, multifunction display is active, check. Fuel quantity, check. Engine soft key, select system, soft key, reset fuel, Okay. Fling flaps handle, select land. Pitot static heat and stall switches. On for 30 seconds and then off. So we'll wait until the time reads 3:37:50. And unfortunately my sound control software is also slightly lower than I would normally have it, just because voice mod servers are down today. So good thing we're not trying to fully... Okay, there's our 30 seconds. Good thing we're not trying to fully stream, because I would not be able to do ATC voice, and it's also how we get the voice of Wing Commander Lamington. Okay, avionics 1 and 2 power switches off, battery switch off. Cabin checks complete. Left side checks, for which we step out of the plane. Wing light, verify condition. Check. Or is that? Yep. Fuel reservoir quick drain valve. Drain. Which I believe would be this valve down here, but this is not modelled in Flight Sim. We would drain at least a cupful of fuel from each sump location to check for water, sediment and proper fuel grade before each flight and after each refuelling. If water is observed, take further samples until clear. Take repeated samples from all fuel drain points until all contamination has been removed. So yes, luckily not something modelled in Flight Sim, but very important to check, because if the engine comes out in flight, you're having a bad day. Okay, main landing gear. Check condition of gear and brakes. So there's our lovely tyre. And there's our brakes. Those look good to me. Main wheel tyre, check. Proper inflation and general condition, at which point we kick the tyres a little bit. And I'm sure we'll do something a lot more technical. Okay, next page. Inboard fuel tank sump and external sump quick drain valves. So I believe that is some of the stuff up here that is not modelled in Flight Sim. But this one step has an entire page. Again, making sure we don't have water or sediment in our fuel. Left wing leading edge. Wing tie down. So if we were parked and expecting winged, I believe that little hook there is our wing tie down spot. So you hook that onto either a connection point or something heavy on the ground. Stall warning vane. I do not know which component this is. Oh, there's another tie down point, I think. Lovely. Pitot tube, which is this lovely pointy thing. Check, verify security, and check that it's warm. And taxi and landing and taxi / recognition lights, condition and cleanliness of cover. Those look lovely and pristine to me. Left wing leading edge continued. Fuel quantity visually check, which again not modelled. Let's just climb up a little invisible ladder here and check the top surface of the wing as well. Lovely, lovely. Here is where we would be doing our fuel checks. Jet fuel only. That's a remarkably detailed little decal for just sitting here, not able to do anything. Fuel filler cap secure. And then on the outboard fuel tank, we would be draining the sump quick drain valve, doing another set of water and sediment checks. And then back down to ground level. And yes, so this is approximately head height as compared to the ground crew that have been wandering around here, which gives just a little bit of a sense of scale as to how big this plane actually is. Nav and strobe lights. Verify condition and cleanliness. That's this little cluster on the wingtip here. Just climb up our ladder again. That all looks lovely and clean to me. Okay, page 4-13 is gauge measured fuel depth versus fuel quantity, which is very useful if you're doing actual things. Okay, left wing trailing edge. Fuel tank vent opening. I do not know which part of the actual model that is, because again, not modified. Aileron and servo tab. Verify condition and security, and let's just move that by hand a little bit here. Lovely, nice and mobile. Static wicks, which are these 4 little things hanging off the back, which help get rid of static electricity. We've checked their condition. Spoiler, which is the little panel that you can see coming up above the wing just before, so we verify its condition. Flap leading edge vortex generators. Ooh, climb up on a ladder for that. I do not know how to verify that particular feature. That is one where if I was actually doing this, we would have a much more detailed idea of the plane. Oh. And flap, which they had us extend to full. So this is the Caravan's full flap extension. Much less than the Caribou will give us. Empennage, which is French for tail assembly. I believe used in arrows. Baggage, check secure through cargo door, which we peek in here and just check that nothing's about to fall out as soon as we move the plane. Cargo door, closed and latched. Horizontal stabilizer leading edge. Verify condition, security, and verify 18 vortex generators on the upper side of each horizontal stabilizer. So these will be the vortex generators. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Lovely. Control surfaces and elevator trim tabs. Okay, so we check that that's moving nicely. So the trim tabs are these sections at the back, which as you trim, these will control essentially what the elevator's base position feels like. And they actually work kind of by, like, partially by pushing the air and also partially by pushing against the airstream to push the elevator the other way. It's kind of wild. Okay, static wicks, 14 total. Verify condition, security, 4 static wicks per elevator half. Check. And there's the other 4. 5 on the rudder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1 on the stinger, which I can only assume is this little piece here at the very tip. Rudder gust lock, unlock. So that's this little switch here. And a delightful feature that I've seen on the actual plane is that the other way you can unlock this gust lock is by pulling up on the elevators as a safety feature. So when it's on, it stops the wind blowing your rudder about, but as a safety feature, the last last line of defense against accidentally trying to take off with it locked is if you pull up on the elevator, it unlocks the gust locks. Very useful. On the Caribou, that is a giant handle that in fact just blocks your throttle from reaching more than taxi thrust. Tail tie down, which might in fact just be this big chunkus of a handle here, which we disconnect. We do not want to be tied down. Oxygen filler door. We've established that the oxygen system does not seem to be installed on this aircraft, and there's our 18 vortex generators to match. A passenger entry door is closed and latched. Check. And just put that on the flags of allegiance for a moment as I get to the next page. Right wing trailing edge. So, flap, condition and security, that looks good to me. Actually doing these, I would be manually handling the all of the control surfaces, double checking all of this sort of thing. And we'll just get our nice little climb up on top. Spoiler, verify condition and check. So, yep, that moves nicely. Pop. Aileron and trim tab. And again, that nice freedom of movement. Do I have aileron? What's aileron trim mapped to? Anyway, I will not try and fiddle with trim while I'm doing this. Static wicks, 4 total. Check condition and verify condition. And then fuel tank vent, which I believe is somewhere on the tip of the wing, but I do not have it exactly mapped in my head, or knowledge of whether they've even mapped it on the flight sim. But it is what it is. Nav and strobe lights, condition and cleanliness, check. Fuel quantity, visually check, which means we would come over here to this matching little jet fuel only filler port. So we visually check the fuel quantity and check that chart again. Fuel filler cap secure. Outboard fuel tank sump quick drain valve. I do not know where that is modelled. And here are those vortex generators we were checking for before. Landing and taxi / recognition lights. Condition and cleanliness of cover. Check. Pitot static tube. Verify security. Opening, so that is actually open on the tip there. Check for stoppage. And check for warmth, because we had the 30 seconds with the heaters on before. Wing tie downs. Check. Inboard fuel tank sump and external sump quick drain valves drain. Yet another fuel condition check, as always. Main landing gear. Condition of gear and brakes. So the gear is all of this mounting hardware, including the nice rubber step panel there, and we've got the brake pads nicely done there. Main wheel tyre, proper inflation and general condition. Tread depth, weather check, so do we need ice tyres on for some reason at the moment, but not in the wet Sundays. Dun, dun, dun. Check, check, check. Nose. Let's get back up to approximately head height. So, right crew door closed and latched. Check. Exhaust cover. There is our nicely open exhaust. So, exhaust cover is removed. Cowling. Open. We cannot open this lovely cowling panel to show the engine inside. Some of the more expensive flight sim models will allow you to do that, but as this is just a base model from the default flight sim set, they do not do modelled engine interiors and such, which except for when I'm doing ridiculous things like this, has not actually been needed. And I'm just checking that I am still being recorded and still... Yep, that is all looking good, and the microphone thing is bouncing away as if I'm speaking. Lovely. So, engine, right side, check. Verify general condition, security, fuel and oil leakage, damage to any components. So, here we pop open the cowling, aka the aircraft equivalent of the bonnet, or hood if we're speaking American. We check the battery condition, and power cables are nicely secured. Fuel filter bypass pop-up pin, which I can only assume is some indicator pin that pops out if something is going interestingly. We check the igniter box for condition and security. And exhaust system, verify condition, security, cracks, distortion, damage. We'll assume that's all good. Cowling, close and latch right side. Propeller anchor, which I believe will be something equivalent to the tie-down straps. Air inlet covers, which is these lovely little windows here. Well, we will open up the covers on that. Air inlets, check starter/generator blast tube opening and oil cooler inlet, right, and engine induction air inlet left. So this one is for the oil cooler and the starter/generator, and this much bigger one is for the engine itself. So we check those for condition, restriction, and debris. Propeller, we inspect the blades for nicks, gouges, looseness of material, erosion, and cracks. Inspect them for lightning strike, which would be darkened areas near the tips. And we check the boots for security, condition, and evidence of grease/oil leaks, which would be stuff leaking out from these lovely mechanisms inside the spinner. And then propeller spinner, condition and security, check. Nose wheel, strut, and tyre. So, we come in on the lovely modelled nose wheel here, where we've got a little marked position for where the tug can tow it by. Do not tow aircraft with rudder lock engaged. We check that the tyre looks nice. There are no brakes on this front wheel because you don't want that. Anybody who's slammed on the front brakes on their bicycle can probably guess why. And one of my favourite features of this is in fact the pivot system, because not only does this steer, but if the nose wheel... I think... No, this one doesn't have it, but there is a very complicated mechanism built all around this thing that... Because between steering and dealing with impacts, there's a lot that this wheel has to do. And the reason that the landing gear on this doesn't retract is that while you get some drag from having the wheels sticking out into the airflow, you get a lot more weight from the mechanisms required to both retract the gear and deal with landing forces. But that's nose wheel, strut, and tyre. Okay. Air conditioning louvers clear of obstructions. Cowling on the left side open, which will be this bit. So again, we pop it open. Engine, verify general condition, security, no oil leakage and no damage to any components. Inertial separator bypass outlet, which is this lovely piece here. So when we pull that inertial separator handle, it opens up this little panel here so that anything heavy in the air intake for the engine, instead of turning a sharp corner to get into the engine, it just flies straight out. Okay, engine oil level sight glass, which will be again inside the cowling, check. Dipstick/filler cap secure. Filled within 1.5 quarts of max hot or max cold as appropriate on dipstick. Electrical power box circuit breakers and diodes. So there are a few more electrical circuits and such inside the engine cowling. And here is where you would hook up the external power, so when you're not just running on battery, but you're not starting up the engine. Standby alternator and belt, verify condition and security. Air conditioning, verify the compressor. Drive belt condition, drive belt tension. Check hoses for evidence of damage and leaks. And condenser inlet/outlet on the lower left side of cowling. Check installation condition and blockage. Brake fluid reservoir fluid level checked and cap secured. Cowling, close and latch. Oil breather drain can, which I believe is something down here, but again not modelled. So oil breather drain can drained. External power receptacle checked for condition and security. And that gets us to the end of the pre-flight inspections, somewhat abbreviated by things not modelled. And again, we just give the plane a nice walk around and check the various things, which is essentially what we've just done. It is a very nice paint job that I'm rather proud of. I may do a higher resolution again later, depending on how I'm feeling. But that is the extent of the pre-flight inspections before we get to the before starting engine checklist, which is where we usually begin. So I will just climb inside again and just have a nice look around at the cabin. And in fact, let's have a look through the cabin as we go. So, got some lovely comfortable seats here, and there you can see pilot's door with its own set of steps, and one for Wing Commander Lamington. And then here you would have the seatbelt and no smoking lights, and we've got some cabin lighting going on. Lovely view out the sides, and I believe those are power sockets for the little in-flight devices. And we've got our lovely seatbelt and no smoking signs there that do not light, but are a fun little addition. And this is in the 8-seater configuration. And I'm moving sideways because in Flight Sim I have a left and right movement and up and down instead of forward and back. So here is the passenger cabin door, which unfortunately, again, being a base Flight Sim plane rather than one of the fancy custom ones, does not animate, but you can see again it has its own little set of steps. So this is the way that all of the passengers will have entered the plane. So this is your emergency exit in general, as the your emergency exits are located to the back of the cabin where you entered the plane. That would be this door. And here, the much bigger door, the automated lights just turned on to evening mode, where they should be on video conference mode. That's better. So this is the cargo door that we saw from the outside, and it is much larger. But as we're in a passenger configuration, you can see that it's kind of half blocked by the aftmost passenger seat. But when you need to get an entire pallet in, and you've not got the chairs in fact if you need to get the chairs out, because you can see these lovely rails that they're bolted to. And here is the air conditioning system as well, but here is the cargo setup. So here's where you put most of your bags, or in Piney Tree's case, well, no, the trunk goes on one of the passenger seats, but every other bit of luggage goes into this lovely little space here, which I believe we would also be able to put either strapping or in fact a cargo net across, just to keep everything nice and closed up. So yes, the inside is reasonably comfortable and rather like one of those, 8 to 10 seater small buses that you get on the school run if you go to a smaller school. Ah yes, then we have the slightly fancier pilot seats, which would have both the lap belt that passengers get plus shoulder harnesses, and the many controls. So just slipping back into the chair nicely. But that is the pre-flight inspection process and cabin tour for the Cessna Grand Caravan. If you are doing any of this for real, please use your own pilot's operating handbook. This is not an educational resource. This is not a real plane. And I showed you nothing of how to do the engine. But there are some lovely videos online of people going through various parts of these, because the sort of people who own these planes are passionate nerds, much like me, but they're passionate nerds who have one of these planes for real, and I do not. So, only a half-hour pre-recorded stream for you this week, unfortunately, but hopefully this has been interesting for those of you craving that sweet checklist content. And I will leave it there and see you hopefully next week.